there, and welcome to the deep dive. It's really good to have you with us.
Hi there.
Today, we're jumping into something pretty significant and complex, actually. The UK's long history and, well, its current role in Middle Eastern oil diplomacy.
Yeah, looking at the sources you've shared, our aim for this deep dive is really to pull out the key insights.
Yeah.
Connect the dots from those early oil finds right up to the geopolitical situation we see now.
Okay, let's unpack that history. Based on the material, where does this really kick off?
It all starts, as your sources clearly show, back in the early 1900s,
Yeah.
1908 specifically. That huge oil discovery in Persia, which is now Iran.
Right.
And that wasn't just, a minor event. It directly spawned the Anglo-Persian Oil Company. Most people know it today as BP.
BP, right. And the sources suggest this wasn't just a business thing, it was strategic, vital for Britain.
Oh, absolutely.
So, like for the Royal Navy, maintaining global power projection.
Exactly. The sources really underscore how critical that oil became. Powering the Navy, projecting influence, control over that oil shot right to the top of Britain's strategic interests. It was less about just profit, more about power, really.
And we see moves to secure that early on, something the sources mentioned called the Red Line Agreement.
Yeah, the 1928 Red Line Agreement. That's a really telling example from the material. It shows British, French, American companies basically drawing lines on a map.
Defining who got what oil rights.
Pretty much. Across the former Ottoman Empire territories, it starkly shows how oil was already shaping borders and corporate power back then.
That history runs deep. Okay, fast forward. Today, obviously, the world's different, no empire. But that fundamental reliance on Middle Eastern oil, your sources suggest it's still very much there.
It absolutely is. The documents you shared detail the UK's ongoing heavy reliance on oil and gas imports from the region. Those 2022 figures you included were quite striking.
Billions of pounds, wasn't it?
Yes, billions spent on fossil fuels from places like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, key suppliers.
But that's where it gets really complex now, isn't it? Navigating all that amid, well, huge regional tensions, like the whole Israel-Iran dynamic.
Yeah.
How do the sources say the UK handles these conflicting alliances?
It's described as an incredibly delicate balancing act. The UK has these very strong, long-standing ties, strategic, economic, with Gulf states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
Right.
But at the same time, an equally crucial alliance with Israel. Your sources point out how recent events, specific strikes and counterstrikes they mention, really highlight how fragile that balance is. Supporting different partners in that environment is tough.
And those tensions, they ripple outwards globally, especially for oil markets.
Well, yes. And what's interesting, as the sources note, is the vulnerability this creates for places like the Strait of Hormuz. That's a major choke point.
About a fifth of the world's oil goes through there, right?
Roughly, yes. So any disruption, any heightened tension there, it immediately spooks the global markets. Directly hits oil prices everywhere.
So, given that risk, what do the sources indicate the UK is doing, trying to manage this?
It looks like a two-pronged approach. Regionally, lots of diplomatic effort, engaging leaders, trying to push for de-escalation, for stability.
Makes sense.
And then domestically, there's this recognition, this need to build energy resilience. So investing in alternatives, maybe new domestic projects too, to sort of lessen that import need over time.
It also sounds like the economic ties go beyond just buying fuel. The sources mention broader trade.
Definitely. That's another layer. Your material highlights deepening trade and investment. For instance, British companies setting up regional hubs in Saudi Arabia was mentioned. It shows broader economic links are growing.
Which brings up a really central tension in the sources. How does this ongoing significant reliance on Middle Eastern fossil fuels fit with the UK's own climate targets? The whole net zero by 2050 goal.
Yeah, that's presented as a major challenge,
Yeah.
a real tension. The net zero commitment is there, it's firm policy. But the reality right now, as your sources lay out, is that current energy demands still mean importing a lot of oil and gas.
So renewables are growing, but not fast enough yet?
Exactly. There's investment, there's a push, but the sources acknowledge fossil fuels are still, necessary for now in this transition phase. It's the core paradox the UK is grappling with.
Okay, so let's try and pull these threads together from the sources you provided. We've seen the deep history, back to 1908, the Navy's needs, then the current energy dependence, the stats showing that, navigating complex alliances in a volatile region, broader economic connections, and finally, this fundamental challenge of squaring fossil fuels with climate goals.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it? A relationship born in the age of empire, now having to find new strategies, new balances for a world that's changing incredibly fast, interconnected, climate aware.
So Thinking about all this, here's maybe a final thought for you, our listener, based on these sources. How does a nation like the UK actually manage that tightrope walk? Balancing its immediate needs for energy security, for economic stability, which are still so tied to these old relationships and fossil fuels, against the urgent global push for clean energy and dealing with all these unpredictable geopolitical risks.
It really comes down to managing vulnerabilities today while trying to secure a very different future, all on a global stage. It's quite the challenge.
It certainly is. Well, thank you for sharing these sources and diving into this with us today.
Thank you. It was interesting.
We really appreciate you exploring this with us.
Goodbye for now.